Hello, I'm Sheriff Scott Childers. I'm the sheriff of Ray County. I've been working the case on Good Time Charlie, and through our investigation, we have proven that Good Time Charlie is innocent of the accusations that were made against him from Stacia Randall.
Thank you. So I've got a whole list of questions, not just from myself, but we put it out to TikTok of some people that wanted to ask some questions that have been like saying, if I could talk to the sheriff, I want to ask some questions. So I posted a video to allow them. But before we start, let me have you introduce yourself and who you are.
My name is Scott Childers, and I'm the sheriff of Ray County, and that is the county that Good Time Charlie lives in, and we've been working the case that has obviously made a lot of news on TikTok.
Yes, it has. It absolutely
Or I
has.
should say, gotten a lot of attention on TikTok.
Yeah, and it's finally getting some positive attention to fight the hate that has come his way. So just so the audience and the people that are going to watch this on the background understand, how long have you been in law enforcement, and particularly how long have you been investigating crimes associated with children?
Sure. I've been in law enforcement for 13 years now, and I did crimes against children for approximately in a task force that specifically did internet crimes against children. I did that for 5 years. And something that I'm very proud of is we are actually at Ray County starting our own internet crimes against children task force here in the next month or so. So we're getting back into it.
That's fantastic. I mean, at the end of the day, the way this internet has gone, we need to do everything we can to protect children. As a parent of a 10-year-old, it scares the crap out of me.
Mhm.
So before we get to all of the details and all the actual questions about the Good Time Charlie situation, I have a very first question that everybody will want to be answered. Is Good Time Charlie innocent of the allegations of grooming a minor and indecent activities with a minor that Stayshasweird accused him of?
Yes.
Okay. That so my that's the first question before we get into the details of this. The second question is, do you believe that Stayshasweird acted in malice, and do you believe that she should be charged with something in regards to this?
I do believe that, but is what I do need to say is there's more information we need to collect as law enforcement,
Yes.
and we have turned in search warrants to prove what we believe has happened, that
Mm-hmm.
that Stacia did do this. We're waiting for our prosecutor to get them done. However, the wheels turn slow, and it just has not happened yet. Is what we do know is that the supposed 15-year-old minor that he was talking to came from the same IP address as where Stacia was at.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so now let's start kind of at the beginning of how this unfolded, because I think a lot of people don't really understand. So tell us, from my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, this started with a cyber tip that came in from Stacia.
Yes, so it well, there was several ways. I want to make sure I tell this exactly right.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, she had made a report to to a family member of Charlie's who she knew would have to say something because that person was a mandated reporter.
Yes.
And um, then that person, and I don't want to say who it is because they're obviously innocent, don't need any light shined on them, did what they were supposed to do and what they
Mhm.
thought was right and let law enforcement know. And that's what kicked everything off.
Okay, but it stems from Stacia.
A hundred
Now,
percent. Yeah.
um, were there in addition to that getting into the mandated reporter's hands that kind of started this whole process, was there other people that have called in regarding this that have made reports on Charlie? Because we know how the internet works. When this goes out on TikTok, people get involved and feel like they need to say their side of the story.
Yeah, yes, there was numerous calls made to the sheriff's office because the information was being told by Stacia on TikTok, and so people were reaching out to us and at the sheriff's office and saying, "Hey, you need to look at this guy, or he did this or did that." And obviously, everything they were getting was just what was being fed to them from TikTok.
Yes. Yeah. So multiple people involved. Um, was so once the tip was made, once you got the tip and once the, I guess, the investigation was launched, what were the next steps that were taken? I know that from talking to Charlie that it was kind of a slow process and he didn't feel like things were being done to clear his name, and he was obviously standing on the ground of, I did not do this and I don't know how this has been done to me. What were the next steps that were taken to kind of move through this process to get to where we are today?
Certainly, and I can understand why he felt that way. As I said, we're still waiting on more subpoenas and search warrants to come back. So this has been going on for a long time. But
Mhm.
we did an interview with him, and then got his information, his side of the story, and obviously with this being on TikTok, TikTok's a newer platform. So some of us who worked, crimes against children, but have been out. TikTok's not a platform I work because I've been sheriff now for 3 years. So, TikTok wasn't really big then. It was coming around, but I'd never worked anything on it. And so we were, not we knew what TikTok was, but we had to learn the workings of it. And so we sent subpoenas out to get the information on his account, the fake account that was the supposed 15-year-old, and then Stacia's. And
Yes.
so the problem when you do that is it takes months to get that stuff back.
Okay.
And you got to think, as a victim of a crime, waiting months, that just, and it took us a long time to get it on top of that. So this took forever, this process did. And as a victim of a crime, especially when it's being blasted all over the internet, that's so difficult for someone, because there's nothing worse a man can be accused of. And so I do feel for him. And the process did take quite a while.
Yeah.
Then after that, Charlie reached out to me and said, "Hey, I feel like I'm not getting the attention this needs. You have to understand how much following this has, the threats that have been made on me." And so I went and had a sit down interview with them and talked with them. And I told them we would, I promised them we'd get it pushed forward. Um, and then during that time, I attempted to interview Stacia, and she never took my calls, never returned them. And I'd left several messages, and that's really where it's at. We're waiting on the search warrants to
Okay.
finish up the rest of the case.
Okay. So that clears up something. So you have made efforts to contact Miss Stacia Weird, because I
I
want
have,
to read you something. So when I first went public on TikTok, I had an interaction with Stacia in my comment section. And shortly after that, she blocked me on TikTok, but then had the, I would say, audacity to contact me privately on Instagram. And where I'm looking for the exact message. And I told her that I had, I had a police report, and she came to me as if she was concerned about me, that I had this all wrong. I didn't know what I was getting myself involved with, but her response was, she wants to know the sources of why I believe the police. You understand there are some people who are biased. I do believe both agencies are correct in both situations. And this is in regards to the police report being closed in Missouri, as well as the CPS investigation that she had launched against somebody else in West Virginia. What's your feedback when she says that they're wrong?
well, data doesn't lie. plain and simple. And so when we send search warrants on IP addresses and it shows us what location that's coming from. And, here's what I got to say is, can I 100% say that she's guilty? Of course not. Is what I can tell you is the evidence says that that account that was open for just long enough to chat with Charlie, in which he really didn't even say anything much on there, nor anything inappropriate. Then that was closed back down. When that's coming from the same IP address that she's at, that's pretty easy as any reasonable person to say this came from this house. And knowing that you got an ex-girlfriend who is angry and who is wanting to use her clout on TikTok to destroy a person's life, then those are pretty easy to put together.
Yeah.
And so 100%, and in fact, she didn't even make up a good enough lie to say, well, I had, a family member here or a friend over that was this age and they talked to him. There was nobody supposedly at that house besides her and possibly another roommate who would have been, obviously well over the age.
Yeah.
But this was a fake account created from where she's staying at.
Yeah.
So it's, here's the deal is people's going to lie, especially if they're in the mindset of where they'll get on and try ruining somebody's life and accuse them. Like I said, if you ask me, being a pedophile is a lot worse than being a murderer because that is life. That is, people can forgive a murder because they go, well, maybe, he's jealous or he's on drugs or there was something that created that situation. When you call someone a pedophile or a child predator, man, there's no coming back from that because that's the ultimate sin, is hurting children.
It absolutely is. And that has been one of the bigger concerns in this. And that's one of the things that we have been fighting about online, is that every day this content exists that calls him out for these actions, that somebody comes along, is another day that his life and his family's life at risk. Because we know that there are people out there that will not wait for justice to take its course and just go after an individual like that. And I mean, as well as his mental health. So that's one of the concerning sides. Throughout this process, what has your interaction been with Stacia? Has she been in communicative at all, sent emails, any return phone calls, anything other than launching this?
Absolutely nothing. I've called and left numerous messages with her and received no call back, no text, no emails, absolutely nothing.
So I have something interesting that has occurred in the last couple days, and there is a woman that has come forward that shortly after all of this happened and Stacia was forced out of the residence that she was at because of some things going on there, she ended up in a group home type, halfway house type of situation. And she attempted to sell a cell phone to somebody that they could never get attached. This woman lives in Ohio and she has the cell phone. And it was Stacia's cell phone. We don't know if it's wiped clean, but she said whatever was on the cell phone, Stacia would be opening it up and looking at and scrolling through it frequently. She said that once she kind of realized what was going on, she never even turned on the cell phone. We have the ability to get that cell phone instead of you having to subpoena it. Would you like us to get that and ship that cell phone to you?
Well, I can't do that. And the reason why is because since it's some people might consider it abandoned property, but I would be very afraid because if there was really good evidence on there and it's going to have to be, if there is a passcode on anything like that, we need to get a search warrant to properly get it. That way it wouldn't be suppressed in court. So we'd need authorities in Ohio to actually get the phone, or that person could turn the phone into the authorities. They could then write a search warrant and then we could piggyback off. We could make another search warrant, get it down here. So it needs to go through law enforcement, for two reasons. One is to make sure that that it wouldn't be suppressed in court. And two is that chain of custody shows that we did everything appropriately, so it would hold up. if this did go to court or,
Okay. And
any reason that.
that's why we asked, because it's being offered to,
Sure.
like, she's out money on this, and she was obviously in a home because she's a domestic violence survivor, and somebody
Yeah.
that's very closely associated with this Charlie situation was going to pay her and get the phone, and so that she could get her money back and we would have the phone. And she was like, but what needs to happen? And that was a good question to ask.
Yeah.
And the reason why I wanted to confirm that you have no communication is that Stacia will stand and say, and she said to me in multiple messages, that she believes that this is innocent, that Charlie is guilty of this, and that he needs to stand trial for this, and that there's more evidence. And the question has always been asked, then why aren't you in contact with the police? And she will not answer that question. And I wanted to clarify that she just is not returning the calls from y'all.
That is correct.
So obviously, since you've discussed all this, it kind of gives us to it. So what ultimately made you say right now this portion of the case is closed, like as the report says? And I know that there's still investigation into her, but the Charlie portion.
Yeah, and it shouldn't have been wrote that way. I won't lie. That was a how the detective wrote it up and put it down. They shouldn't have done that. We basically, at the time, and I'm not blaming them, we didn't realize what we had on our hands. We knew that there was some allegations, but it took Charlie explaining to us how big this was and the fact he started getting threats. So that was done prematurely. The case has been reopened officially. So it is open. As the documents you guys have, obviously what he's got, it shows it closed, and he and I talked about, said, no, it's reopened. And so I said, don't worry about that. And as I've mentioned several times, is there's more search warrant subpoenas that we're waiting to get back. However, my prosecutor hasn't done it yet.
So if and when, well, at this point in time, now that you've told me that the case is reopened, is it the case reopened into an investigation into Stacia?
Yes, that will be a part of it. As we gain more information, that will give us, the more information. Then yes, because it's what this has turned into is, and like I said, I have to be careful because I'm law enforcement. So I have to be careful how I say stuff and what I do say. That, if it does show, the evidence does show from how we're collecting the data, which it's all leading that way, I can tell you, I know what happened, but I have to have, it's not what you know, it's what you can prove in the court of law, correct? So we would file charges against her for this.
Okay.
But it's going to take some more. It's going to take some more investigation, and that investigation's got to be done through search warrants and subpoenas.
And if and when you are able to achieve these search warrants and subpoenas, and you get the evidence that you believe that you're going to get, what potential charges and potential penalties could she face?
Well, it definitely, once you get harassment that gets to a certain degree, this is harassment when you look at all of it, but when it gets to a certain degree and death threats start coming in, you can go up to an assault, actually. So we could be looking at an assault in the state of Missouri. Every state has different charges. Fortunately, in the state of Missouri, we're behind on internet crime statutes. So any charge that has internet, and I've, this for a guy who's worked internet crimes, it's like, gosh, I wish they could get caught up on some of this stuff. And so we don't have a lot of those like some other states might have. And so we certainly would go for an assault because of all the backlash he's gotten, the threats, his information being put out there. Invasion of privacy could be one. Obviously with harassments, there would be several, with the damage that's been done, we would certainly try and get as many charges as we could, because obviously this has uprooted his life and created much.
The next question I have is he's got a minor daughter that has been involved with this, that her information has been released. And because of this particular situation, he has not been able to see her. What is being done is anything being done from a law enforcement standpoint to protect them at this point in time from what's coming their way, and particularly protect this minor child that should not have ever been brought into this situation and should not have ever had her name and information outed in regards to this situation?
Definitely. And I certainly don't want to give too much information away on that. That part of this case I'm not dealing with, to be
Okay.
honest. And so I don't want to say too much about that because that's not a part that I have to due to locations, put it that way.
Okay.
That's not a part I've had to be concerned with. So how that's being handled, I don't want to comment on that because that has nothing to do with what I'm doing right now.
Well, and that was that kind of leads to another thing. Um, there are reports into multiple jurisdictions, into multiple states. Is there any way that this could be combined into some type of a federal action because of all of this? Because you're uncovering information. I'm assuming other jurisdictions are uncovering information, and everybody's piece of the puzzle has to come together at some point so that we're not duplicating or finding different information. Is there anything that's going to be put together to bring all of these jurisdictions together in one kind of united front?
Yeah, definitely. So on a federal level, I don't think it's quite there. I do work with Homeland Security investigations. I'm a task force member with them, and that started when I was doing crimes against children. There, at the point of a federal charge, it's really hard to get federal charges because
Yeah.
you got to get to another level. And that's where I'm talking about. Our laws haven't caught up. It would make sense that we got something where you've got somebody that's got 1 million people on a platform and they're falsely accusing someone, and that person's getting I'm sorry, I'm laughing because my son's in the background.
I
So
can see him on his VR. It's cute.
I apologize. I'm trying to keep him out, but I can't see because my screen's so little. So
No,
I'll
that's
try
okay.
and
It's cute.
move that a little bit. Yeah, he doesn't have school today. Lucky me.
It shows your
So I have a
dedication.
10-year-old myself, so I
Same age as my
understand
son.
that. So yeah, as I was saying, we haven't caught up on that level, statewide, federal level, and so would it make sense? 100% it would, because this has gone obviously with 1 million users all over the United States and probably then some. Um, but with I just can't think of a federal charge at this point, but it's something we'll look at and talk to some other states. And other states could pick this up. It's possible for that to happen too. But usually, it's where the victim is or the suspect. One or the other takes it. Is how typically they work. Now, both states could pick it up. And if there was a specific state where a threat was made, they could go back and say, hey, this person made a threat due to the actions that Stacia did, and go for a charge from there. So that's always a possibility. Will it happen? I seriously doubt it, because internet-based crimes scares so many people. Sorry, my kid again. I love him.
That's okay.
Internet crime scares so many people, and they don't know how to work them, or they get scared working them, and so they just would rather not mess with it. And I that's something I've tried to educate a lot of people, because it's just like doing any other crime. It's data is your evidence. You can consider it, all cops work drug cases. You do a car stop, you get drugs, right? Well, you got to package that up. You've got to do this, that, just the steps we take. Data is the same thing. It just takes more steps, and it's all done through, search warrants and it's something that's abstract at the time until you get it in your hands.
Yeah.
And so we have to teach law enforcement not to be scared to work these cases, because let's face it, that's the future of where we're at, and where we're at now. And then that's the future where we're going, is it's always going to be data related cases.
Yeah. Well, and just as an individual that's been through some of these things on TikTok, it is incredibly scary and incredibly daunting because nobody really wants to hear. And a lot of times local law enforcement says, sorry, it's out of our hands because they're in another state and this is federal jurisdiction. File an IC3 with the FBI, which they get thousands of them and nothing is ever done. I
Yeah.
mean, I think they're overrun. So I know that right now you're waiting for some subpoenaed evidence to come back, but you also, my understanding is, and may correct me if I'm wrong, is that you need to issue some additional subpoenas to get the evidence that you need, and it's sitting and holding and waiting on the prosecutor.
Yes, that is correct.
Is this a normal time frame for a prosecutor? Or is it that the prosecutor is not taking this serious and serious what's happening to Charlie in his real life off of this app, that it's destructive?
It is not normal, but two things I want to say is yes, I think what you said is I don't think she understands the impact of what this has done to his life and how important it is for this to be finished, which we've already put the findings out there that we know he did nothing wrong.
Yeah.
But it needs to be completed. But the second part is her not understanding it. But the second part of that is I have a prosecutor that just doesn't do her job.
Mhm.
And it doesn't get done and nothing moves forward. And I struggle with this on every case. This is hence why it's taken so long to even get to the point where we're at now, let alone to finish and complete the case. And so, it's a major problem, major issue that I'm dealing with. And I've been fighting that battle for 3 years now and continue to fight it. And, it's quite disheartening, and that's not what we're here to talk about. But
We'll have a whole nother
have the
conversation
story. Yeah,
on that, because I do want
sure.
people to hear that side of really what happens behind law enforcement when you're trying to do the right thing by victims. And that doesn't just mean a victim of a false allegation. That means a victim in any crime. And when you have a prosecutor that's not doing their due diligence or taking it seriously.
Yeah,
Because I know Charlie has sent emails, and as recent as yesterday was in the assistant prosecutor's office asking for something to be done, and pleading with them for some help and assistance, because until something happens in the realm with her, there's nothing that can be done to remove this content that daily puts his life at risk from social media. We have reported it to the apps. We're messaging the apps. We're emailing anybody that can be heard, and nothing is happening. So I did put a video out asking them to contact the prosecutor. But as per our conversation yesterday, you said that people should up it to the attorney general. Is that correct? And like say, hey, can we pay attention what this prosecutor is doing?
100%. It's any elected official, a prosecutor, a sheriff. We are elected officials. We're public servants. And when you're not serving the public, then it is hard to remove somebody from office. And I understand why. But as I said, I've had this problem for years now, been fighting the problem, and I've been begging the Attorney General's office for help. And so I would tell anyone, if this case has affected you, or you have a part of this case you want to see, if you don't agree with what's going on, contact the Attorney General and let them know there's some negligence being done over there, and it needs to be finished with the prosecutor.
Okay, that is what I wanted, and I had let people know that that's kind of the course of action that people need to be taking, because I mean, obviously there are a lot of people that want Charlie to have peace and want to protect his mental health, because on the TikTok community, we just watched a young man at 23 take his life because of extremely similar allegations. It was eerie watching it on cover with this young man, and that exactly parallel to what's going on with Charlie. And I think everybody stands and has this fear. And I had sent a message to Stacia saying, you do realize that somebody took their life over these type of allegations, and you could push Charlie to do this. Please take down the content. To which she responded, no, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's sad that we live in a day and age where it takes so much to get this removed. I understand freedom of speech. That's what makes this country so great. But when that freedom uh, can affect someone's mental health, their safety, um,
Mhm.
just their name, uh, it's really sad. And then you have to rely on other people to get it done. It's like I said, this whole case has been it's taken way longer than it should have. It's been blown out of proportion. People hear something and they run with it, and they believe it's the gospel just because they like somebody, and it's really sad that this is the day and time that we live in, how it's so easily for people to be manipulated.
Yeah.
And it just can ruin people's lives. And like you said, it's, it was somebody over a very similar situation has taken their life. But that's something, that we know that's public. This happens multiple times a day where someone's taken their life because they've been accused of something they're not, guilty of. And so, but when you take that and you intensify it by putting it on a social media platform, that's very dangerous.
It's extremely dangerous. I would love to get your kind of view on what from a law enforcement perspective, what do you think about this vigilante justice that's going on, where whether it's man or woman, they're being deemed guilty in a witch hunt online where only one side of the story is being told. It's usually always the person that has the bigger account, the bigger voice. What impact, what's your view from a law enforcement standpoint on this? I'm sure it's muddy. I'm sure it muddies the waters in actually being able to investigate these cases too, and makes it a lot harder when you've got multiple calls coming in, multiple people putting information, sorting it out. Is it hurting these cases moving along?
Yeah, well, it certainly slows things down. Is what it does. It slows it down for us because we have to take that call and we have to log it, and what do you know about it? Why you know it? So then we got to waste manpower on it. But it also puts us on a time frame because now we have somebody that is getting harassed. They're in jeopardy of their safety, their livelihood, whatever it may be, being affected. Also, the what it does to their mental health, their family's mental health. There's so many things that go into it that, like I said, it's dangerous, and it's sad that we live in times like this. You know, just to be able to accuse someone or create allegedly create a false account. Like I said, I'm a cop, so I have to be careful what I say. We know that account was opened up and closed right away after, which would look like it's somebody trying to do a type of entrapment, obviously
Yes.
from the same location where Stacia was at. So, but like I said, it's not what you know, it's what you can prove, and we're not to that point yet. Um, that somebody could do that just to get back at a person or to try and get their following to attack this person. Um, it's sickening that we live in to me, that goes back to the ancient times of stoning. That's exactly what this is. This is the new version of stoning someone. you know
Yes.
have everyone join in and cast a rock because let's hurt this person. Let's ruin their reputation. It's very sad. It's very dangerous. And I think as we get, we start to understand, as we've learned with cyberbullying, that took us years to understand, because we're so always so far behind as far as law enforcement, as far as the public, of understanding the impacts these things have. And now that TikTok's take it off, and we have these huge platforms with millions of followers, um, it's going to take years to get these studies to see the effects of this. And also, how many times this happens, how these cases, you know, turn out, and what the end result is. And that's something we won't know for years because this is still new charted territory. It's in its infancy at this point. So dangerous though. And, it's, it's sad that we live in this time. And, I'm like anyone else. I use social media. It's a great tool to put information out there, but it's also one of the most dangerous tools.
It absolutely is. So I have a question particularly. I have a woman, her username on TikTok is Erin Three Witch. And on the Travel Channel, because Stacia is a Travel Channel sponsored creator and they post her videos, we have gone on those videos of everybody that is supporting Stacia saying we love you and things like this, and said, you do realize that there's a police report proving that Charlie is not guilty. And why are you still supporting this woman? Her response was, ugh, I'm sick of hearing from you people. Get a fucking life. So these are the things that I'm getting when I'm telling people what's going on. Charlie's getting 10 times worse. So from a law enforcement perspective, what would you say to the horde of social media people that are harassing him and harassing anybody that stands up to him? What would you say to these type of people?
Well, first of all, you need to take the time to actually look at the evidence and not just jump to the conclusion that someone is guilty. It's irresponsible, it's dangerous, and it's unfair. Put yourself, there's not a person on here that's not going to listen to this video that has not been accused of something they didn't do. And you
Mhm.
know how that felt. Imagine that being broadcasted to millions of people, and it's that you're a pedophile.
Yes.
Put yourself in those shoes. Stop. Take your own personal interest out of this and think of how damaging that would be to you. And that's what I say is we it's amazing how we take no time to stop and think about the consideration of another person's well-being, their mental health, the impacts that we have on here. It's really sad and disgusting that our society is at the point that they are.
Yeah. Um, let me see. I had a couple other questions that came from social media. Um, Actually, I think I've covered a lot of the questions, but I have another question that's kind of not about this, but would be very related to this. One, what are the impacts? Because I feel like there's like, particularly with social media becoming such a blooming thing, and particularly with TikTok, there's been an uptick of these false allegations that are destroying people's lives and also taking up police resources that should not have to be being taken up. What is the impact of false allegations on active victims of childhood sexual assault or domestic violence or any other crime? What is the impact of these false allegations on actual victims?
Yeah, well, first of all, let's talk about the resources. I mean, law enforcement, we always have resource problems, whether it be manpower or, um, you know, the resources to. Not everybody knows how to work these type of crimes, and so they've got to reach out to other departments or maybe to a federal agency. And the manpower that goes in this. So is what you're doing when we have to deal with something that's false is you're taking away from an actual victim that we could be spending time on their case. And especially when you're talking about internet, that's a long time consuming. You have to write, it takes months to get things back. And then you have to write dozens, maybe not dozens, but a lot of search warrant subpoenas because one piece of information is going to lead you to another. So you got to get the information on account. Once you get that, now you're seeing the IP address. So then you write to that IP address. Or maybe you get a service provider and you got to say, hey, I need the IP address where this came from. And you have to keep following that chain up to get the information you need. And these can span over months and months and months, as you've seen now.
Mhm.
And so you're talking about a lot of waste of my detectives and this is the way it is. Most of them, we don't work property crimes. We work people crimes because I'm a smaller sheriff's office. And so my deputies work the property crimes, the stuff when somebody gets a car broken into or damage done. My deputies only focus, or excuse me, my detectives only focus on crimes against people. And so now you're taking my two detectives and you are taking their time away when they've got actual cases. We have, homicides. We have very violent crimes that have occurred, and they're having to spend their time taking phone calls, sending the search warrants, waiting to get back information. And, but it also, that's one side of it. The second side of it is it belittles, it's the boy who cried wolf. You start putting doubt in people's minds that, well, if this isn't true, why would their case be true? And so then you start putting doubt in people's minds. And then you got to look at the third side of it, how they're feeling. They're seeing this come out, and, they're waiting for their justice to happen. And they're seeing all this attention coming from somebody who doesn't deserve it. And they're like, why is my case not getting this attention when this happened to me? There's so many impacts that just trickle down from this. It's, and like I said, I don't even think we know the full impacts that we're gonna have from these platforms on social media that have grown so huge. I think it's gonna take years and years to see where we're gonna be at, because this is ultimately, we're in the infancy stage of this. But yeah, you take away the manpower, the fact that you're putting doubt in people's minds, and so it makes them feel like, well, if nobody's believing this person, then why are they going to believe my case? Or, if somebody's putting false allegations out there, now it makes me look like I'm lying, even though I'm telling the truth. So there's a lot of implications that come from this that, would weigh heavy on a victim, and they struggle anyway. If I've worked sex crimes for many years. That's one of the hardest things that they have to deal with, is not only going through the whatever trauma they went through, but the fact when they do report it, the time it takes to work it appropriately, and then to get the court proceedings moving along, that is so traumatic in itself. And then to see this being broadcasted everywhere, the mess that it brings, that puts fear and doubt in their mind.
It absolutely does. So I am a domestic violence survivor that never went to the police in my 20s when it happened to me, for fear of not being believed. So I can't imagine going through that in this day and age with the discussion around these false allegations. And then in addition to that, I am an attempted rape survivor. And in that particular instance, the police basically said, do you know who did this to you? And do you know what they're going to do to you publicly? I recommend that you don't proceed with this. And I didn't. I mean, I basically was told that I was not going to be heard, and this was a high ranking official's son. And I tucked my tail and ran, and have never received justice. Now, I did receive justice because he did this to somebody else very publicly, and did get convicted of it. But I did so in a way, but at the same rate, in that scope and landscape has changed so much. And I believe that these allegations are truly hurting victims in a way that we don't even know the impact. And I think people need to recognize that. Now, my next question is, I receive men on a daily basis in my comment section and across this platform saying they're being falsely accused. They've been falsely accused. Their reputation is being destroyed. From a law enforcement standpoint, what advice would you have for a man that is being falsely accused? What can he do to protect himself in any way, shape, or form?
Yeah, and this is going to come down to, is this somebody just saying it? So if it's someone just saying it, then take it to law enforcement. If you're innocent of it, not guilty of it, but these people are making these claims, you go to law enforcement yourself. Let them work the case. Offer to do, a polygraph, a CVSA. That's a computer voice stress analyzer test that detects, stresses in the voice. That it doesn't hold up in court like a polygraph either, but it's a good indication that you're telling the truth. It's a nice piece to have, but have them go in and do the investigation if it hasn't reached that point. Now, if you are being investigated, then be cooperative and help in any way you can. Here's the deal is, when those allegations come into law enforcement, I think no matter how much we want to say we don't, is we start off with the mindset of this happened. right?
Mhm.
Let's just be honest. So many people, and this is what I try and tell young detectives, do not ever make a decision on an investigation. Let the evidence lead you to that decision. Don't come in with this must have happened because
Yeah.
they're saying it happened. Let the evidence lead you, because as I said, it's not what you know, it's what you can prove. And so if it's at that point, just be 100% cooperative. I get that it's, if you're falsely accused of something this terrible, that it's embarrassing, it's difficult. But if you're truly innocent, then help law enforcement to prove that you're innocent. And
And would you say that Charlie was helpful in helping you all prove his innocence in this situation?
100%. And I truly feel sorry for him, because I think he had to educate us some on the impact of how broad, how big this was. Because, like I said, when you take in consideration there's 3 million followers, if I remember right, that's the number that there is. I'm getting old, don't remember stuff as well anymore, but there's like 3 million followers. There's no, I think it was a million.
Yeah,
Is that right?
she's got close to a million, slightly under a
I'm
million.
sorry.
Her
Okay.
following is slowly
So
dwindling, but still it's a
yeah,
lot.
so when we're taking consideration, he said, "Hey, she's got almost a million followers, and then those followers share it to someone else, and it just spreads." And so he had to educate us some. And I hate saying that when I'm a guy who prides himself on knowing how to work these cases, but like I said, TikTok's new to me, and
Mhm.
I don't think I've worked one case on TikTok yet. And so we got educated and we learned, but luckily we had a background. But it's, you're going to see these smaller agencies that have no clue what to do, period. And so he had to advocate for himself, and he got my attention, and I'm glad he did. He called me and said, "Hey, I need your help on this. I don't feel like it's being taken serious enough, or they don't understand the impacts." And he could have been very, even though it's affected him, his mental health, instead of being aggressive or just angry or bitter, we sat down and we talked, and he helped me understand what was going on. And I said, "Man, I got your back. Let's start working this. Let's do this and get it done appropriately." And that's what we're doing now. But he did it the right way, and it took him a while to be heard. And like I said, I feel bad that, it took us a little while to come around to it. But we did, and it's because he handled it the right way. And not everybody, I think, would have that amount of patience or be able to explain stuff the way he did. But yes, he's advocated great for himself. He's helped educate us, and we're rolling now on it, other than the fact of the pieces we need are out of our hands. And
Yeah.
once we get those back, we'll finish up.
Okay. I don't actually have any further questions in regards to this entire situation. First of all, Sheriff Childress, I want to thank you for doing this and being willing to put this public, because I think this will be 10 steps further, at least in getting the harassment to kind of slow down and settle down, and having people actually hear that it's not us standing here with a police report that they say, well, you could have made that up. This could be fake. Maybe this didn't really happen. We've got a valid face behind this saying, this man is innocent. So I want to close by asking you again, is Charlie innocent of the allegations that Stayshasweird made about him?
Yes.
Okay.